Welcome to Engaging and Empowering School Libraries, a podcast that aims to raise the profile of school libraries by talking about topics that are current across education and teaching. School library inductions are something that most school librarians focus on at this time of year. Some do something very simple, while others are more elaborate. So tonight we are joined by school librarians Hayden Gigner, Susan Merrick, and Rachel Chavez, and my co-host, Ruth Maloney. I've got through that bit with names, so that's good. So hello and welcome to everybody. Can I ask you to tell us the type of school that you work in and why you think, to get us going, why you think library inductions are important and what's their purpose? So let's start with Hayden. What do you think? What kind of school do you work in?
Hello, I'm Hayden. I work at Heritage High School. I only started in April, so I'm quite new to Heritage. We are a mixed comprehensive. We have about 980 pupils, so not a lot. We don't have a sixth form.
Okay.
We're quite unorthodox with what we do. So, so thanks for inviting me first, but I'm sort of the curveball, I think, here.
That's fine.
With inductions.
Well, rather than you explain what it is that you do currently, why do you think that they're important?
I think that it's a really difficult question, actually. I think I'm tempted to say they're not. No, I think
well, say what you like. Yeah.
I think that pupils having a streamlined experience is important.
Okay.
And therefore, perhaps a kind of induction is very important in order to streamline the experience, because we have an agenda and we're there to increase the likelihood of young people choosing to read in future. Okay. And anything we can do to steepen the sides of that funnel towards that event is a positive thing to do.
Okay. And that is currently via inductions, but not necessarily having to only be inductions by the sounds of things.
Yeah. Ask me again in a moment, because I'll explain what I mean. It's a bit
absolutely. We will come back to you, Hayden. Thank you very much. Okay, so Rachel, what about you? Can you tell us what school you work in and why you think library inductions are important?
Yes, I work at Dereham Sixth Form College in Norfolk. We're part of a an 11 to 19 school, but we're on our own separate site. So it's just years 12 and 13.
Okay.
So in some aspects, an induction for our students is really important because they've never been with us before. So it's not like they've had the years of experience of using the library. But I think really there's three key elements. So one is to impart the really, really important information that they need to know from the start. And when I say really, really important, be very specific, because you don't want to bombard them at the beginning of a year.
No.
I think secondly, making ourselves as librarians in the library visible to them, particularly if they've come from somewhere else. And then helping to just embed the idea of the library being a key part of their learning and development while they're there.
And certainly working with older students, there's probably a different slant on what you're hoping that the children or the students are going to be using the library for.
There are. When I speak to them, I make it quite clear that they will experience a shift as to what they're used to.
Yeah.
But my role with them is now, say, much more of a split between encouraging reading for pleasure and supporting them with their course studies.
Okay. I read something that you wrote on the SLN, the School Library Network, recently, and I'm very interested to hear about what you're up to. Thank you very much, Rachel. Okay, Susan, let's bring you in. Can you introduce yourself and tell us why you think your library inductions are important?
My name's Susan Merrick, as you know, and I work at ACS Egham International School in Surrey. So we are an independent school in UK language reception through to, we do IB diploma, so rather than A-levels. I'm working with the 11 to 17, 18-year-olds. Okay. Why are inductions important? I don't really call what I do an induction.
Okay.
I do remember when I first started teaching years ago that they were called inductions, but mine tend to be spread out over a number of weeks or even months, giving them just small amounts, especially getting them into the library, learning who I am, how to negotiate the library, encouraging them to read. I'm lucky I'm embedded in the English department. So the English teachers bring their students in at least once a week. Sometimes they're in more often than that.
Okay, because so you're guaranteed time in the library with the students, then you can drip feed what's coming up. Presumably it makes it easier than having to do it all in one go. There's a lot of people probably listening that have a library induction and you've got an hour and it's go, you know. So it would be quite nice to sort of look at the different experiences that everybody's having. So thank you very much, Susan, that's great. Now Ruth, who is my co-host, normally you sit there quietly, but have you actually done any inductions yourself this time?
Yeah, so we're doing, well, we run two slightly separate things. We have an induction for year 7, which I'm running over a period of time because, a bit like Susan, they come into the library regularly. They're in every fortnight, so I can do that. For me, the purpose with them, so we are a secondary school, we're an IB school, but we are super selective. There is a high degree of kind of healthy competition, academic competition amongst the kids. So part of what I see my role of induction being is almost to say, you know, I always say to them, shut your eyes and put your hand up if when you saw there was a reading lesson on your year 7 timetable, your heart sank a bit and you wished you could go and do anything else, because I want them to understand that while there is an expectation that they are all reading, I know that some of them are not great readers, and I want them to feel comfortable in the library anyway. So I'm almost doing an anti-library induction because I kind of want them to think, partly because I look a bit like a librarian, you know, and I don't want them to think, oh, geez, the librarian, I must pretend I read. You know, I want them to think, I can't remember the last time I enjoyed something beyond Topsy and Tim Go to the Circus, showing my age. But they, you know, so I think the library is doing that. And then I run something for year 12 because we take in a lot of students in year 12. And we run the IB diploma as well, which is very, very different from GCSEs. And so that's kind of the other half of my job. That's an induction into the research aspect of the library, less an induction into, you know, these are the reading for pleasure books, and this is what fiction looks like, and this is how you borrow and return, that kind of stuff. So it's multifaceted, unlike everything else that we do, Elizabeth. But I only wear one hat.
Yeah, sounds exciting. Sounds great. Okay, so I know that there are lots of great inductions that you are going to be telling me all about, but let's take a step back. When I talk about inductions to other school librarians or to teachers or to schools, it tends to be what we've that Ruth has just mentioned, that this is how you use the library. It's, you know, this is where you issue a book, this is where the fiction is. But are inductions only for students? Do we think that we should be inducting teachers? And if we do think, what is it that you would do to induct, if that's the right word, a teacher? We'll come back to you, Hayden. Do you do inductions for your teachers or anybody else for that matter?
We do this old induction sort of. I probably have about 3 minutes of explaining to anyone how the library works, and I try to keep it, and I'd get rid of that if I could. It's what I'm more focused on is processes. So things like having single sign-on connections and communication between systems, so that pupils who are already doing things like logging onto a computer and clicking a button that they're used to clicking there's a big button next to it that says library, and you click on it and it sort of just zooms you straight that way. So that's sort of, and we can talk about that more if you want to, but in terms to just zoom in on the question that you asked about teachers, I apply exactly the same principles for everyone, I think. So I do, it's the library that I've just moved into. I have deliberately built something physical in the library that's got a CPD library shelf for resources for teachers, and also a staff bookshop, book swap type part of the library that is books that are more likely to appeal to our staff than perhaps the young people. That doesn't mean that the young people can't borrow them. There are some books that young people might want to borrow there, but they're the ones that I think that the staff are more likely to be the audience for. And that's physically built around the printer, for instance. So that kind of, it ties clever in with what I'm doing in terms of, so that's my induction. It's a sort of subtle kind of tweaking and manipulating of the environment, so that I'm not necessarily saying, hello, teacher, come into my library. Here are the books for you. What I'm doing is I've literally just put it right in front of where I know the teacher's going to be looking. And that's the kind of philosophy behind it. But I have also, I've gone into a staff briefing and I've said, hi everyone, by the way, there's a CPD library.
And it's that's important, isn't it? That they know that it's there. And actually that's very clever. It's having it right next to the photocopier where they're going to come in anyway, and while they're waiting for all the copies to churn out, they can glance around and see the books. It's very clever, very good.
That's the idea.
It's important, isn't it? Because I think as well that we need to see, our students need to see our teachers in the library and doing more than just photocopying. So I think it's a very clever technique there, Hayden. What about Rachel? What do you do in your library? Do you do inductions for anybody else other than the students?
I don't, but I wish I could. The nearest I get to is when we have our Year 12 induction day and they have their whole day of carousel, different activities. Their tutors go around with them. So they, in theory, get to sit in and listen and take part in everything that I'm doing in that session. But other than that, I only really get to either talk about things when they come up in conversations in the staff room, or they've come up to see me about something else, or we have a staff bulletin that goes out. So I try and, at key points, remind them of certain things available through there as well. But no, I'd love to be able to sit down with a whole group of them, and especially when we get new members of staff coming in, and just go, look, this is what I can offer you.
Well, maybe that's the turning point. Maybe we when you do your induction and the students their teacher is following the students around, you've got a question for them. Warn them in advance. I will be asking you something, and make sure you're listening.
That's a very good idea.
Lovely, thanks, then, Rachel. What about you, Susan? Do you do anything with the teachers?
I certainly require that the teachers be there when I'm working with the students, so that way they do get a certain understanding of how the library works. Our library is in 2 sections at the moment, and has been since the pandemic, but is going back together next year. So right now we have a recreational reading library, which includes recreational nonfiction and fiction. And then we have a nonfiction research library. As far as staff induction, I don't do an induction for the entire staff. I go into staff department meetings.
Okay.
And so I talk to the department about resources that are particularly aimed at their department and teaching and learning in their subject areas. And I also have a subscription to something called LibGuides, which on the whole in the UK seems to be used more at university level, but in North America it's used in secondary and sometimes in primary schools as well. So I have LibGuides for each of the departments and the units that they're doing. So I also introduce those at the staff meetings. Okay, so I think what you said was really interesting, Susan, about, well, I think Rachel said it as well, is that the two, in giving the information to the students, the teachers are there, so hopefully the teachers are listening. It's a bit like when you teach
inquiry skills or information literacy skills to the students, you're hoping that the teacher is listening in and will be able to ensure that it's done properly the next time when the librarian isn't there. So I suppose library inductions is the same kind of thing, isn't it? The fact that they're in the room, they're following along with what's going on. So hopefully they get the information they need to. Sorry,
well,
Rachel.
I've actually had, sorry.
Go on.
I was going to say, I've actually had teachers say to me, oh my goodness, I didn't know that.
Exactly.
No, I might be teaching the students something related to doing a Google search, perhaps using the site operator. And they come to me afterwards and saying, oh my goodness, this has just opened something up for me. Thank you so much. So it's important to have the teachers there when you're doing that sort of thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ruth, can I bring you in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because I'm half like with you, Hayden, entirely, that it's about making it as easy as possible and reducing the need for an induction, really. But I think there are two things. So for me, I'm always saying to the person who organises our new staff inductions, why isn't there library time? Why isn't she? Oh yeah, we must put library time. We must put library time in. So, and it isn't. It's the same as with the kids. I just want to be in front of them. They can come in. They can see the collection. They can borrow books. And some of them will come up and wander around and have a look and start talking to me. And then I've got an opportunity. But I need to be able to say to them, not just hi, but look at what we can do. Let's talk about what we can do. What do you want? What books do you want? Do you know that these books are here? Will you bring your kids up, please, from the science lesson or the DT lesson or whatever it is? Just come in, bring them in, talk to them about anything book related. I don't care. They haven't got time. So at the moment, this year's staff induction is I am available any form time. If you want to miss assembly with your form because you don't want to go to assembly, why don't you go along to a library induction instead? And that was I volunteered that because I couldn't find any time to do it. And I wanted to give staff that opportunity. I haven't had any take up. But it's a real shame because there aren't enough opportunities for those kind of subject leader team meetings or, whole department meetings. Absolutely never. They haven't got time for anything. So
there does need to be something though, doesn't there? It needs to be.
It does, but it's a different thing that you're showing them. It's not really an induction, maybe it's an opening of a conversation. It's the starting of something. Absolutely. Rather than a, procedural this, that, or the others.
Absolutely. No, I would agree. I'd agree. So let's take us on this next step of the journey. So we've all been librarians for a long time, some more than others. I agree. But we've been in different circumstances in different schools. When you first started creating your library inductions, what did they look like? Can I go to Rachel first?
Yeah, so originally I worked at an FE-HE college in Surrey. Right. So we were trying to see thousands of students at the beginning of the year. So an induction there was very much sit them down in rows in front of a screen, say, hello, this is me. This is what your library looks like. These are where things are. And this is how you search the catalogue. And then bye-bye. And hope we see you again soon.
Yeah.
And there just wasn't time practically because we had so many to fit in to do much more beyond that. When I moved to the sixth form college about 9 years ago, initially I was having a look through my resources and I couldn't find anything for the years that I started. So I don't think I even did any library inductions then. And when I was given some time, it was almost a panic. Oh, I'm only going to see them for this short time. I have to tell them everything I can, which, as I quickly found out, failed drastically.
Absolutely.
So it took a lot of developing to get them better.
It's a learning curve, isn't it? It's not something that you just go in and you know how to do, which is really interesting. Hayden, I know that you have got an interesting something to share with us in a minute when I'm trying to I'm building up the excitement. What did your inductions look like when you first did them, back when you first started as a school librarian?
When I first started as a school librarian, it was about a month before the pandemic kicked off, and I'd never done it before, and so my support network sort of fell out from beneath me as well. So when I was crawling around in the dark to begin with, and there's sort of pros and cons to that, because I sort of had to think on my feet and had to be pragmatic about it. But yeah, to begin with, there was a lot of, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, and yeah, I quickly learned that what I was putting in was actually probably a barrier to getting more pupils to engage with the library, because it was things like handing out, we didn't have physical cards, but every pupil had a sort of library barcode.
Right.
So every pupil had a code or a password and a login and that sort of thing. And they were handed out only after a letter had gone home with a sort of agreement that pupils would take responsibility for the resources, and it was clunky. There was a lot of it, and it also it worsens the inequality, because the pupils who were least likely to jump through those hoops were also the ones that probably needed the most, that they would benefit the most from reading a bit more.
Absolutely.
And it only becomes clear once you've done these things. You've gone, this is a great idea, it'll all fit together, and then all the kids will read. And then you realise later down the line that actually it's you're encouraging those, you're preaching to the choir, because those who want to read are going to jump through those hoops and they're going to do it. But actually, you don't need to work so hard with those pupils. Only the pupils who are probably not going to do those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Hayden. All right, Susan, what about you? Where did your inductions start?
Well, I'm really going to date myself here because I started as a librarian before computers. In fact, before, the only thing we have is a large television set on a trolley, to show them videos occasionally. Do we have videos? We had video machines, those big ones with the big tapes on. That was so long ago.
Yeah.
And we had a card catalog.
Wow.
And so my inductions were teaching the kids how to use the card catalog. And that's, I didn't have a screen or anything, way of projecting anything. We were actually all around the card catalog. And I also had catalog cards for them to look at. And we talked about what each thing meant on the card.
Because to be honest with you, Susan, if you gave kids cards these days, I think they'd probably quite enjoy it.
So they might.
Something different. So maybe you should bring it back in.
Yeah, it was great fun. Actually, they seem to do just fine, Yeah, but no, and then of course I took them, it was more taking them on a sort of a tour of the library. This is this section, this is this section.
Yeah.
And then of course we taught them, I'm just trying to think, it's such a long time ago, it would have been grade 9, which is year 10. So the students would have been coming up from a school where they would have had a library and they would have known Dewey. So they would have done some work with Dewey. So there was probably some work done on just reminding them of how to use the Dewey Decimal System to find books on the shelves, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah,
no,
long time ago.
Yeah, it was. And what about you, Ruth? What was your first memories?
I think I have tried pretty much everything. I spend a lot of time worrying about it. I find it, because it's very personal. The way you present in the library, particularly those first impressions, are very personal. And I will read people on SLN, or I look at books or whatever, and they say, we've got this brilliant game and you can do this. And I think, I can't do that. I am not a game playing kind of librarian. And then I think, oh, my inductions must be really dry. And so every year I twitch them, and every year. And now I think I've just got to the point where I'm comfortable with the me that I am in the library in our school, and I've decided that it works. And yeah, so I think I've tried everything.
So we're going to move on to the next question, which is, what do your inductions look like now? So I'm going to stay with you, Ruth. Do they look much different from when you first started?
Yeah, they're much less. Well, at some point I lost the technical part of this is how the catalogue, how to actually use our software.
Yeah.
I'm bringing that back because actually without that, I spend half the year explaining to kids,
Yeah.
because they don't do what I think they're going to do, which is go away and play. Even the inquisitive ones, you know, the ones who are library kids, don't go away because they just don't press buttons. Anyway, so I do some of that. But actually, what I spend most of my time doing is talking to them about what they like reading. And pretty much my induction is, right, here's the library, you know, fiction's over there, non-fiction's over there, be quiet generally in here, don't run around, put your returns over there. Now tell me, what do you want to read? And we do a lot of that. Okay, so, and they play a game with me. Can they, if they can't remember the title, can I work out what the book is? Can I work out what the author is? You know, we do that kind of that
so
test.
you do play games then, Ruth?
Yeah, but it's not like it's just I like to see if I can remember who the author is, kind of thing. But yeah, it's that's what and it's almost an induction to me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Rather than
learning about the kids.
Yeah, because I think if they can spend, year 7 love to spend a time recommending books to each other. Like, you know, what did you read? And I have some rules about, it has to be something you think other people won't have read. So you can't, Murder Most Unladylike, not allowed to tell me that. You know, don't tell me the plot, tell me why you liked it, those kind of things. But that's it. Pretty much my induction consists of getting to know what I'm like, so that then they can come and ask me another time. You know, the technical things mostly fall into place, I think, afterwards. You know, how do I borrow books? What happens if I want to renew it? All those kind of it's fine.
No. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Susan. Susan, let's bring you back in. You mentioned at the beginning that your inductions work over a period of time now. So they're more structured. Are they skills based? Are they fiction based? How do they work?
They're not structured. In fact, very much like Ruth's, I want the kids to get in to learn how the library's set up. And the first library they encounter is our recreational reading library. I want them to talk about the books that they're reading. I want them to know at the end of the very first session that they can take up to 5 books out, except over holidays when they can take 10 books out, which they get very excited about. At least some of them do. You know, that where the checkout desk is, where the return cart is, how long they have the book for. I want them to know all those sorts of things. And I want to do that fairly quickly so they can get out and, well, not get out of the library, but get out of the circle I have them in and go off and find a book.
Yeah.
And of course, the same sorts of rules. Remember that other people are trying to read and you should be reading. So let's try and keep the noise down. You know.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to Rachel. Rachel, you wrote about some kind of induction that you are currently doing. Can you just explain that for anybody that didn't read the SLM post?
Yeah. So I'm now in the 2nd year of the induction program that I've finally come to. So what we do is in July, we hold a taster day for people that have applied to us. So initially I get to see them on that day. And in the session I do with them, then we play musical book speed dating.
Okay.
So I set the tables up in a big U, have some music playing. So they walk around a bit like musical chairs. And when they stop, they have a 3-minute date reading the book that they've come to, and then record their initial reactions after it. And we do a few rounds of that. And that is pretty much the bulk of that session, other than a little bit of almost selling and promotion, if you like, to encourage them to make that choice. Yes, I've come. I really want to definitely come in September. So that I don't give them any real proper information in. Then when they start year 12, their first day is an induction day, and they have a 45-minute session with me. In that, we start and we finish with 2 games that, in addition to learning some skills like using the catalogue, help them win points for their tutor group, with the aim of the winning tutor group at the end gets a nice tub of Cadbury's Heroes to take away with them. And I have a little bit right in the middle where I just explain the more dual role of the library now that they're at 6th form, and the 4 golden, what I label the 4 golden rules, but they're kind of the 4 behaviour expectations that we have. So I give them very, very limited information there again. And then now we have just started what I've called my Skills Lab tutorials. And that is 4 separate tutorials rather than induction. Tutorials that happen over the course of the first term. And the first one that we're doing now covers the library basics. So the how to borrow, how to renew, reserve. I give them a bit of a demo on the catalogue, and then they go off and they do an activity practicing using it. But so it's not until this point that I actually give them any of the information that really they need to remember at that point. So
Yeah,
prior to that,
right at the beginning, so you've done the you know, the game back in July is all about just the library is a lovely place to be, and it's fun and it's engaging. And actually the bit that they really need to know, they begin to learn once that first couple of days or a week back at school where everybody's telling them all sorts of things that they need to remember, that actually when they've got a bit more headspace, you then bring it in at a bit later on, which is really interesting. And have you found that it's made a difference?
It's made a huge difference. Partly in that, I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced this with their students, but particularly with the 16 to 18 age group, they'll come in, they'll sit down, and unless they are really library people and readers, they will sit there and they'll stare at the floor, twiddle their thumbs for practically the whole session. Whereas now, because I get them up and about, engaged with that first activity, they're then livened, they're happy, they're prepared to listen to me to tell them the important bits in the middle before we then finish with the other game at the end. So it's made a huge difference to their engagement levels. Absolutely.
Yeah, which is great, which is fantastic. Sounds great. You know, I'll have to come and observe one day. So let's move on to Hayden. Hayden, we do need to hear what you get up to.
Yeah, thanks. I actually, now that I've listened to the rest of you, I don't think I'm that much of an outlier as I was expecting.
Okay,
I'll try my best. One of the most extreme things we've done. No, especially talking about being in front of the pupils and getting to meet them. And Ruth, you said about, you know, it's almost an induction to you rather than to the library. And I agree with that. But I'd kind of extend that out a little bit more and say it's more culture. I think this culture is one part of it, and then the technical side is the other. And yeah, I do heavily. I do want the pupils to experience that the culture, the positive culture, and the enthusiasm, and having a role model in front of them. I think that is extremely important, and I'm very lucky in that I do see pupils very often. We have sort of, they're not necessarily library lessons, but we have embedded in the timetable, we have book swaps. So sort of twice half-termly, I think, I see every class in Key Stage 3 at least will spend a little bit of their English lesson with me. And they will just come in and I will just perhaps give them a little concept about, you know, today we're going to learn about narrative nonfiction. Pick a narrative nonfiction book this week, maybe. But they get a chance to swap their books with me there as well, and they're all in the same space at the same time. But in terms of sort of the replacement of the induction, the formalized induction thing, it's all about kind of embedding the same principles, but within the environment and within the routines that already exist. The idea is to sort of take away the psychological barrier of having to do something, because what we do, what's really interesting about libraries, as opposed to teaching, is teachers will sit in a room with 30 children and they'll prescribe something, and they'll say, okay, this is what we're learning today, buckle up, that's what we're doing. Whereas all the research and there's tons of research to link the benefits of reading for pleasure, of elective reading. It's all about choosing to read. It's pupils who choose to read in their spare time that have all these benefits associated with them. So our job is kind of circuitous, and we have to convince pupils to do what we want them to do. Yeah. So it makes sense for us to kind of try and embed things in. So for instance, this isn't fully in place yet at Heritage. It's a work in progress, but we expect pupils to have something to read.
Okay.
That's as high as the bar goes. So if somebody just wants a comic or manga or something or a picture book even, as long as it's got some words in it, or if they want to bring a book from home, fiction, non-fiction, information book, whatever they want.
Yeah.
But it's an expectation, and it's a hard expectation. If a pupil arrives and they do not have a book, they do not have something to read, there is a consequence. Just like in the same way as if they didn't have a pen or a piece of their equipment or a uniform. So there's a little nudge there on one end saying, no, we expect everyone, because we all do it. We all read. Of course we do. Reading is like so good for you, so we're going to push you.
Yeah.
But then you have freedom on the other end, and freedom of choice. And so part of my sort of induction instinct is actually, well, okay, can I find any more spare time in the school day so that I can make sure that pupils know that I'm always here, that I'm really open, that I'm obvious? Can I physically move myself out of the library and go and have lunch with them at lunchtime and sit there with a book?
Right.
So that it's obvious. And I know, and a lot of it is very subtle and psychological, rather than bringing a group of children into the library and saying, hello, welcome to your library, this is what we do here.
Yeah.
And I could talk for hours about all the little tweaks and things that we're putting in place, but that's the philosophy, at least, is that rather than having one chunked, almost kind of sequestered, because that can almost damage it. You can shoot yourself in the foot there if you sequester it. And we talked a while ago about it's tempting to be more visible, and discussions with staff, and how often there is already an embedded culture of that's just the library, or the library is for this group of pupils, or this is for the English department. And I think actually putting effort into really embedding the library into everything and spreading us out across the whole school does organically induct people into the library.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. If you've got a policy, which is a good policy, of students having something to read in their bags, is there a next step to that? Because obviously a kid could be carrying a book around for weeks on end and never read it.
Yes.
Just because they've got it with them.
We have an online, it's brand new, and we're going to launch it with Year 7 this year, and then launch it with the rest of the school, if it goes well. An online, essentially Goodreads or Storygraph, other reading log apps are available for the whole school. So every pupil will be logging their reading, and again the bar is very low. So initially we are not saying we need you to be logging 20 minutes of reading a week, and we're going to be checking up on that. We're going to be logging your reading. There's a global school goal, so it's going to add up. So there's a totalizer that's going to be shown on all the screens around the school in minutes. Staff are going to be doing it as well. So if I read a book, I'll be adding my minutes to the total goal. There's competition between forms. We can put challenges and other kind of things into it so that we can give rewards for people who are reading the most or doing this. And again, because we're doing minutes, that's really good, because you'll have one pupil who's reading 3 pages in 10 minutes and one who's reading half a book in 10 minutes, but they're still going to be scoring the same points. And there's nice inclusivity in there. Staff read. So for instance, during form time, we have form time reading in the morning twice a week. So tutors are going to be logging reading for the whole class. So again, it's going to be like super embedded in the whole school as this is something we do, just like we check our emails, just like we line up before we get into the classroom, we log our reading. there will inevitably be a curve there, right? So I will see that there will be some pupils who are super reluctant. There will be some pupils who are just not engaging with it. There will be some pupils who are, well, we don't need to worry about them because they're going to be logging in. They're going to love it, and it's going to be the best thing ever for them. But what it will do as well, because the data will be so strong there, is that I hope I will then know which pupils to then have more work with. Like, I love the idea of having little tutorial sessions where there are certain pupils that I've now identified as the pupils who can read but won't read, and then I can bring them into the library, and it's much more efficient in terms of making sure that they're the pupils that I really need to infuse the most.
Fantastic. Okay, so I've got people with hands up. So Ruth, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, Hayden, you are not allowed to say we've got this app that does this amazing thing and not drop the name of the app, because I've wanted the school to go on Goodreads for as long as I can remember, but it's social media. We absolutely do not do social media, so you must have some magical proprietary tell me it's free app that we can all use.
I'm afraid it's not free. It's a company called Beanstack. They were on the American version of Dragon's Den a few years ago. So it's a US thing. They're called Beanstack, not Beanstalk. That's like a stack of beans.
Yeah.
And it is directed at schools. It's aimed for schools. And so they can have friends on the app. If you are a pupil, you can pick that someone is your friend, but no one else can see that other than you, and they cannot communicate. There is no, you can comment. They can review books on it, but reviews come to me first, so I can sort of monitor them. So there are all the things that we worry about with social media. They've thought of that, and those features do not exist in it.
Brilliant. Okay, another couple of things. Can the parents join in?
Yes, and we want that to happen. We're not there yet.
Okay, and does it integrate with your library catalogue? And if so, which one do you know?
We haven't got there yet. I'm hoping it can. They've already spoken to me about, like, I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of an API that can communicate with other things, because they're helping us build the widget for the global totalizer that will just appear on all the screens. So I'm sure it would be a conversation that people would be happy to talk to. All these systems can communicate with each other if someone's happy to sit there and tap out the code, I suppose. In terms of the library management system that I am very familiar with is Simple Little Library System, Bailey Solutions. That's another program that it's really customizable. So it lends itself to that kind of thing. You can completely tear it apart from the inside out if you want.
So what's the catalogue that they're drawing on? Because one of the benefits of Goodreads or Storygraph is, of course, that pretty much everything you want is on there. You know, everything the kids are going to look for is on there.
It's ISBNs, so I assume they might be drawing from multiple sources. It might be coming through Google. I don't know where. I can find out for you, but
no, as long as you feel like it's good coverage. That's the thing. It's not.
Yeah, I was able to. We have reading lists for each year group, and I've just put them into the system as challenges, and I didn't have any book that I tapped in the ISBN appeared. They sell it on the idea that you can put anything you like in it, and because pupils might not be reading from the library, they might be reading books at home.
Absolutely, that's the problem we always have. Is that, you know, we've got kids who it turns out are huge readers, but I've no idea who they are, because they never come into the library, because they're fortunate children, you know, financially fortunate children. They don't need to. Well, that's a revelation. Thank you.
Last year, sorry, just one last thing, because it's perfect for that. This was when I was at a previous school, and I'd already embedded a few things, and I'd kind of got to that point where I was doing these things. I called it the "What Are You Reading" campaign, and that was my swapping out instead of doing library lessons, I had as many classes go through as possible, and all it was I brought them all in, and then I'd walk around the room and say, "What are you reading?" And that's how I found out again about so many people. Someone would bring in, you know, Tolstoy, and they're halfway through, and they've been quiet all year. And what do you? Oh my goodness, you know. But that's really good. That's really good information to have, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, brilliant, fantastic. Thank you.
Can I bring Susan in?
Yes, well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for introducing us to that. I'm going to have a look the first thing tomorrow. And I'm actually chairing a meeting of the librarians from our 3 campuses, so I'll also talk to them about that. How involved are the teachers? Are they sitting in class reading along with the kids?
Yeah. So in English lessons, in some English lessons and in our form time, teachers are reading to pupils and logging for like the whole class, or they're reading as a class. They might be doing some like phase reading where some pupils are being called out to read, and they're reading the book together, and that's all being logged and added to the system. In terms of staff reading amongst pupils, we have some moments where that happens. I like to do that. At any social time, I like to be able to stand in front, just be visible and look as cool and as I want to be as much of a role model as possible. I want to visibly enjoy reading in front of young people, because I know that'll have an impact. But in terms of pupils, in terms of other staff, we have a few really big readers in staff, and we celebrate them.
We our school is quite supportive of our teachers reading, and in fact, twice a year, they send out a list of books, and you can have a copy of any of the books on that list. And about 3 weeks later, in comes your copy of the book. So that happens twice a year. It's really quite fun having all of these books. But I was also interested in what you said about reading aloud to the students, which I think is really important. And I was wondering if anybody's involved in the World Read Aloud. No? Oh, okay. Well, I'll get you the details on it, because there's I've never done it, but I was thinking of doing it. Oh, you have? I mean, I've read aloud to my students, but I've never been involved in that one book that everybody around the world is reading out loud to their students.
But I think that there has been a diversity of that, or a diversion of that similar kind of theme. But there was a lot of schools in America where they were having they were celebrating World Read Aloud, and they were inviting guests from other parts of the world to read to them. So I read a few picture books to grade 3 and 4 from the UK to them, and of course it allowed, what was really nice is I got to read a picture book to some kids in America, which was wonderful, but I also was able to tell them about where I lived, and it was, they were fascinated by the fact that I lived up, not anymore, but I lived on a little island in Guernsey, and it sort of led to other things around the reading, which was really lovely. But yeah, I think, but it's worth, so is World Read Aloud all about the same book, is it, Susan?
It is, yes. It's the same. I'm fairly certain it's the same book. I saw recently on one of the Facebook librarians groups somebody talking about it coming up again. So I will find the information and pass it on.
That'd be fantastic. That'd be really good. So I've just noticed the time. Okay, so we seem to have diverged slightly, gone off on a slightly different tangent, which is fine, which is great, because reading is hugely important, and having our library inductions focused around that is really, really positive. So it's not a problem that that's happened, but it's really fascinating that is where we've ended up. I'm going to ask you one more question. I'm not going to go through the others, because we've talked a lot about the things that we have and we haven't done. If we've had problems in the past, I think probably we've sorted them out, and it's just a case of trial and error, isn't it? And from what you've already said to me, I think you change them on a basis that is just when they come up, it happens, it changes. So I'm going to just take a couple of minutes to introduce Engaging and Empowering School Libraries, a transformative training membership designed exclusively for innovative school librarians. If you're a school librarian passionate about fostering collaboration across all subjects, I extend a warm invitation for you to join me on this remarkable journey. My mission is simple yet powerful: to empower school librarians through comprehensive training and unwavering support. By equipping them with the necessary tools and knowledge, I aim to help you enhance independent learning, elevate literacy levels, and nurture overall student well-being through the incredible resource that is your school library. By joining my community, you'll embark on an exciting adventure alongside like-minded people who are equally committed to educational excellence. Together, we'll explore a unique learning experience that embraces innovation and encourages the growth of your students. For more information about this extraordinary opportunity, please visit the link provided in the show notes below, and don't miss out on the chance to be part of this wonderful journey. So I'm nearly at 50 members, so I have a special offer this evening. My 50th member is going to get a free one-to-one with me. So if you are thinking about joining me, do it soon. Right, so final question. You know, hopefully we've had a lot of school librarians sitting here listening to our conversation about what we've been doing and the ways that we have tried to engage our students and teachers. So what would be your one piece of advice for those who find inductions hard? I'm going to start with Rachel, if that's all right.
Of course. My one piece of advice, I think, would be to take the pressure off of yourself. It is very easy, and I know I've done it and others have as well, to fall into that trap of thinking, I've only got this one session with them. I need to tell them everything I can and just talk to them and give as much information, show them as many things, but that doesn't work. So one of the things that I learned recently, I was listening to a webinar from Dr. Graham Gardner about teaching the EPQ, which I do. And he said he always starts his sessions by outlining, what do you really need to know today and why? And so I took that and applied it to my inductions, thinking, what do you really need to know literally today that you cannot leave without knowing? And what can I actually impart at another time in another way that isn't even necessarily me delivering it directly to them? What can I give them online or through video or other formats? So really focus on what do they need right now and take the pressure of everything else away.
Lovely, thank you. That's a really good one. Thank you very much. Susan, what about you?
Well, I just think I would agree with Rachel. And you don't want to overload the students. You certainly don't want to overload yourself with pressure. So just give them the basics, that which they need to know at that time. And then since I'm also dealing with younger students, let them find a book.
That's a good one. Thanks, Susan. What about Hayden?
I agree with everything I've just heard. Yeah, keep it simple. And let them find a way as well. Let it happen organically. Beyond that, be pragmatic. If you're going to ask a question about how to do an induction, the question should be why. What's the purpose of this? Why am I actually doing this? And dig as far as you can into that, and until you get to a point where you go, actually, oh, I get the purpose of that. This is why I'm doing this. And then the next question to ask is, well, what is the most efficient way to do it? And it might be weird. It might be something that no one's ever done before. But if it is the most efficient way to do it, that's how you should do it, even if nobody else has ever done it before.
Usually, if nobody else has ever done it, it's usually the right thing to do. Thank you very much, Hayden.
Sometimes.
And what about you, Ruth?
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, is what do they need to know? And the only thing they need to know is that you want to help them enjoy and reading and find new things to read, and that you are judgment free. And that's my, and I always tell them I'm the slowest reader, probably the slowest reader in the school. So you're not going to shock me if it takes you, if you renew your book 15 times. That's what I want them. I want them to be comfortable when they leave and nothing else.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a fascinating conversation tonight. Thank you so much for joining me, Hayden, Susan, Rachel and Ruth. Any tools that we've talked about will be in the show notes below. So Hayden, you need to pass that on for me. As always, if you'd like to comment on anything that you've heard about today, we'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to my podcast so you don't miss out on future discussions. Thank you very much for listening.